everyone and welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to talk all about a brand guidelines document, sometimes known as a brand bible, and I'm going to run through what it is, why it's useful and what to include. You are welcome. If you are new here, please subscribe and join us. I make videos regularly on branding, visuals, social media marketing aimed at independent musicians. So if that is useful to you, then please stick around and join us. I also have some courses available on my website, so please check them out. Super affordable, branding, social media related. Boom, let's dive right in. Okay, so a brand guideline is something I create for most clients I work with. If they don't have one already, it's much more difficult to actually do a standalone creative project. So I have to dig and find as much information about their brand as I can. So having this document is super helpful for everyone involved. And it is basically, usually in PDF format, a document that you have that outlines all the information about your brand. So if you work with a photographer or a videographer or anyone really, you can send them a copy of this document and it gives them an idea of what you're about, who you are, how you want to be portrayed to the world. Specifically for the creative stuff, photography, videography, it is really useful. So that document basically gives them instantly an idea of, okay, this is the vibe. Obviously you can build on that. You can have creative input from those creatives and work together on something developed from your brand guideline, but it is super useful to give them the essence of you initially, so they have a good idea of where you want to go with it. Okay, so what is included? It can obviously vary, I imagine, from designer to designer, how they do it. I'm going to outline a very simple version. And then I'm going to give you a few more things as well. It really depends on the individual brand as to what I would include and whether I would delve deeper into certain areas or maybe at that stage miss out certain bits. So this is just a general kind of guide and it is on the simpler side of brand guidelines, but I'm doing this with the idea that those of you who don't have a budget, you can put this together. Don't worry if it's messy, even if you do it in whatever program or even in a notepad, don't worry, this is just an idea of you to get those notes together so you can actually send them to people you work with. Okay, so first of all, I've got the aesthetic. So this is an overall vision board, a guide to your initial aesthetic, and this will be made up of consistent visual elements. So these are visual elements that are repeated consistently, that you use consistently. And all this can develop and change, and it will develop with time, but all you can do is put this together for the stage you're at now, and it gives, you know, a visual representation of the kind of vibe you're looking for. Then we've got logo and variations, and I think for some music artists this is maybe more veered towards businesses, but some music artists do go heavy on the logo and it's great to see. I have also seen artists work without maybe a logo. So this one, again, it's totally down to you and your individual brand, but generally for when I design a logo, I will do 2 or 3 color variations, maybe one variation within the actual logo, and then an icon version, which is useful to have for like a favicon or a watermark, or just, you know, another option, another different shape and layout of the logo. It's useful to have. So I usually do a logo set that is the main logo, maybe a variation, a couple of different colorways, and then an icon version as well. Then we've got color palette and font palette. So these are useful specifically if you have a website or do a lot of graphics. So again, with music artists, there is very much a big breadth of what your brand might be like. You might not have a website. I think it is useful to have one, especially for team members, for getting a manager, getting a label, more that side of things, more of the business side rather than the fans. But I do think it's good to have a website, and if you can be consistent with that visual brand throughout. So for example, it would be your logo, maybe a header within your aesthetic from a photo shoot you've done with the aesthetic in mind. And then this is where your color and font palettes come in. So the color palette, you get actual codes for these colors. So in terms of graphics and website, anything digital, you can use those exact shades. And then in terms of aesthetic and like styling, you can obviously match, you know, to the screen. It doesn't have to be the exact hex code, but it gives you a kind of idea of the colors you're going for and make sure you don't have anything clashing. Again, this color palette can change over time. That is fine. You know, but it's good to have a rough idea of the kind of colours that suit you and that you like. Font palette. Generally you have a heading font, a subheading font, and a body text font. So if you go on most websites, you'll have big headlines in a certain font or style, and then you'll have a subheading, so a smaller heading in a different one, and then a body text, which is like the bulk text of the website. It gives you variation basically. You don't want the same font all the time, it gets a bit boring. So the headline and the subheading is kind of space for you to play, do something a bit weird if you want. The body text, make sure it's easy to read. If you have got a website, and I'm sure you've all been on websites where you are trying to read maybe a lot of text, maybe a big biography, and it's in a crazy font and it is so hard to read. So the body text, make sure it's clear, simple, easy to read. And then the heading and the subheading, you know, you can do a little bit more with. Then we've got brand keywords. Now this is really useful if someone has no brand, they've done no work on their brand and I need to work with them, keywords are the first question I would ask. Putting together a list of at least 5 adjectives, or doesn't have to be adjectives, that encapsulate you as an artist and how you want to be portrayed to the world. So I've got the example here on the screen, but other ones I've worked with a pop punk band who said like high energy or energetic, positive, bold, fun. Like those words together really gives you an idea of, okay, I know what this person is going for. Another one, I worked with a lo-fi duo, and these are always the examples that stick in my head because they are flawless. The lo-fi duo said eerie, moody, nostalgic, hazy, lazy, like beautiful words. And again, together, it really paints a picture of who they are. And it's such a small task to do, a simple task to do, but it really conveys a lot. Okay, so the last thing I would try to include is your audience profile. So at the very least, do the rough age and location of your audience, and also similar artists that they would listen to. So other artists they would listen to other than you. Those 3 things I think are core, especially for when you're doing paid ads or when you're thinking of content strategy. Obviously, if you can add to that, the more you can add to that, the better. Just any other information, even if you think, oh, that's really obscure, it doesn't matter. The more information, the better. But at the very least, get those, because again, it just conveys this with all those other points, really convey who you are and what you're doing and what you're going for. So yeah. Okay, and then the others are just, obviously anything else you feel is important to your brand, feel free to add. That's the most important thing, is that you actually define what is most important to you and make sure that that is communicated. But just some ideas are any information you have on your communication style. So how you write captions, whether you use emojis, maybe some examples of captions that you've been consistent with on social media, just any information you can give about your communication, the language, whether it's formal, whether you use slang, anything you've got. Also, you could give a bio and a rough idea of your story as well. I do talk a lot about story and how you can bring it out in content, but it's good to have a little bio or a little story on your brand guidelines as well. So again, I think the story tells a lot. You instantly get to know someone a lot more, even if they tell you a 2-minute version of their story. So story, little bio, whatever you want to call it, good for your brand guidelines. And then I've also got stage design ideas, and I think again some artists are really veered towards the live performance and will be gigging all the time, doing open mic all the time. So if that is you, then definitely consider your staging, or maybe just your performance, any kind of maybe some live imagery, or ideas for how you want the stage design to go in the future, any info about your live performance if that is a big part of you. Some bands will be much more veered to the production and the recording side of things and not like gigging as much. So again, just try and veer it to your needs, whatever they are. But yes, this was some information. You can put some core information for your brand guidelines. There is more you can add. You can make this document as big and fancy as you like, but hopefully this gives you a starting point. So yes, check out my courses. And I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye!